Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to continue our discussion on switchgrass. Today we're going to talk about maintenance. Now maintenance is kind of a vague word. We're really referring to the cleanup and maintenance of a first year planting, maybe into a second year if you got some weed issues. The number one tip we like to tell people on maintaining switchgrass is doing nothing, absolutely nothing. Okay, how do I do that, John? What do you mean? Well, if you start clean, if you look at those videos that we've talked about I think our last video on switchgrass was talking about start with good, high germ, good seed. That's why we like the RC Big Rock. There's nothing like it on the market today. I really enjoy this relationship with Roger and Don in Reap, Canada. This is so much better than anything on the market, this RC switchgrass. It grows so much faster. I really like using it. But you have to have a clean slate. If you've got to do any kind of tillage, get that out of the way. Make sure you get your sprayings done. I like to see some warm weather, whether you're spraying in the late summer or if you're spraying in the spring. I like to see some warm weather to where you can get at some of those warm season grasses. Foxtail is a big problem with switchgrass, and I like to see that killed, whether you have to use Roundup or Roundup with some clethodim like we talked about long before that switchgrass seed hits the ground. That is a key to not having to do anything. The very first switchgrass planting I ever did was about 9 or 10 years ago. And I got a great kill all summer long, frost seeded it, walked away from it, and didn't go back and look at it till July. And it was weed free, it was clean. There was a couple of milkweeds in there, but by and large it was a complete success. But then I've had a couple where I sprayed when it was too cold, started spraying too late. A lot of weed issues to deal with. We don't want to get into that situation. Again, the best maintenance program on switchgrass is not doing anything. So, all right, so let's say we didn't get a good kill. We didn't do a good job with our spring spraying or our fall spraying. And we have some weeds. You've got some options. Simazine and atrazine, those are pre-emergence. Simazine being the most popular. You do not need what's that called? A restricted use permit. You do not need a restricted use permit for simazine. I do not have one. I do use some simazine as a pre-emergent on our switchgrass as well as our HD food plot screen. Now, simazine, I think from my own experience, it does a pretty decent job on a lot of the broadleaf. It'll slow pigweed down to where a lot of your plants can get out ahead of it. Again, it doesn't kill it. It just really slows the growth down. And simazine is listed as a pre-emergent for foxtail, but I'll be honest with you folks, I've not seen that. I would much rather kill the foxtail with Roundup than try to prevent it with simazine. I think atrazine does a much better job. I think it's more potent. I have a lot of customers and partners that do get to use atrazine, and they said it does a much better job than simazine. So those are your pre-emergents. But the one thing, again, we talked about it, I don't want you to just throw simazine and seed down and hope for the best. I really want to see some killing sprayings, whether it's summer, late summer, or spring green up all the way up until maybe May or June. Now, broadleaf plants, pigweed. Man, I don't know if it's going to work on. There's some stuff down in Illinois. I've seen some guys, Iowa, I think they call it water hemp. I'm not sure if it's the same thing as pigweed. I've not seen it before. They said this water hemp is it's pretty tough to kill. But what up here, one of my switchgrass plantings we had, of all things, daisies come in. And we did have a little bit of pigweed. I used 2,4-D. One of the things I tell people with 2,4-D is if you can do a small test area, I really like to see that. I did a small test area. I mixed it too hot, and I was spraying our HD screen. HD screen wasn't happy, turned a little bit of color. I backed the rate down a little bit and went back and hit a different spot a week later, killed the pigweed, then I took it and that same batch went and killed the daisies in the switchgrass. But the 2,4-D, the reason we talk about that, it's readily available. You can go get it at Tractor Supply. Now, the simazine, I order mine from Keystone Pest Solutions, so I get pretty much the same thing every year. 2,4-D, I usually go get the stuff off the shelf at Tractor Supply, but that is what you're going to use for a broadleaf problem. Now, the biggest problem we see with switchgrass as far as weeds is foxtail, okay? Because, and if you think about it, you're growing a switchgrass, and foxtail is another grass, but this quinclorac will control foxtail and switchgrass. Now, you can't spray it until it's at the 4-leaf stage if you're spraying young switchgrass. You also have to add what's MSO, and I'm going to butcher this name. I believe it's called methylene seed oil. Now, where I like to talk to gentleman Jake Blow out in Minnesota, his company is the Habitat Pro. He's got some great videos on spraying quinclorac. I believe he just had one out 2 months ago where he's actually spraying one of his clients' properties. He walks you through the steps. I've not sprayed it yet. I just get so busy, it just gets out of hand. But I'll talk about the quinclorac I just bought last year. But that's what you're looking at. Now, you can't spray it when it's very young. Jake talks about you want to get to the 4-leaf stage. We are going to do some quinclorac spraying this year. I've got a pocket of foxtail I can't get rid of in one of our screens and some of our switchgrass, so we are going to use quinclorac this year. And I've got the MSO methylene seed oil. We've got that here as well. I bought both of them from Keystone Pest Solutions. Now, one of the things we're really not talking about today is rates. What I tell people, whatever you're spraying, make sure you read the label. Don't just take social media's advice, especially us. Don't just say, hey, I saw it at the Northwoods video. What I'm showing you is this is the exact product I buy. This is the rate that we use. So if you're buying this exact product, the rate that we tell you that we use will probably work. But you can't just say, hey, I saw online 2 quarts of quinclorac. Well, that might be one of the common rates is 2 quarts an acre, but we got this from Keystone Pest Solutions last year. This is quinclorac 1.5L. It's from Control Solutions out of Texas. This is what it looks like. This came from Keystone Pest Solutions. Now, one of the first things I did is I read the directions. 1 ounce per 1,000 square feet. And I believe it's 47,000 square feet in an acre. So I need 47 ounces. I don't need the full 64 ounces. 64 might have been a little hot. And the last thing I want to do, I don't want to spray. I don't want to mow. I don't want to do any maintenance on the switchgrass if I don't have to, okay? But the one thing you definitely don't want to do is go overboard with quinclorac. You don't want to overlap your sprayings. You don't want to mix it too hot, okay? Of all the things, when I say read the label, by all means follow the label on this quinclorac. You don't want to hurt your switch, okay? You know, a lot of people talk about it takes them 3, 4, 5 years to get their switch to full height. You shouldn't have to do that, okay? If you don't have to mow, if you don't have to spray, you're not stressing that plant. So if you're not stressing that plant, it's getting to full potential quicker. And mowing it and spraying it is stressing the plant. Okay, so I don't like doing it, but I'm just telling you folks some of your options if you have a problem with weeds. This is what you're looking at right here. This is where we get it from, Keystone Pest Solutions, 2,4-D. We get it from Tractor Supply. Quinclorac, we got it from Keystone Pest Solutions. By all means, please read the labels before you start spraying. If you think you're going to need some of this year, go buy it soon, take your time, make some phone calls, understand what you're spraying, understand what your sprayer puts out, understand all that. So the day before you want to spray quinclorac, or if you're doing 2,4-D, you don't have to call, let's say like us, or you don't have to go online and say, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do here? How do I do this? Okay, this is very important because I've talked about it before. If you screw this up, if you kill this because you sprayed the wrong thing or you sprayed too early or too late, it might take a year to recover from that. You know, if it's rye or oats, you can fix that in a week or two. But switchgrass, man, it's going to take a while to fix that mistake. So read the labels, please. Read the labels, all right? But again, I don't want to do this if I don't have to. But if I get this part right, the rest of this is meaningless, okay? So your best option is to get it right first. So let's talk about mowing. Mowing is an option for a lot of people, but mowing can get you into trouble to where it really harms the switchgrass. And what I mean by that is you don't want to scalp the ground. You don't want to get too low. You're looking at anywhere from 6 to 12, 14 inches. One of the things you're trying to do basically with mowing is set the weeds back, trying to keep them from going to seed, but you don't want to mow all the time. You don't want to do 5, 6, 7 mowings of the year. 2 at the most. But the biggest thing is after August 1st, we want to stop mowing and just let that plant develop. We want a root system to develop, and that way it can go into winter and not be harmed by frost in the ground. So, and again, this right here, what we're talking about is pretty much the first year. Hopefully the second year, you're not into the same situation. But if you're going to mow, which a lot of people do, you know, kind of get in that 8 to 12, 14-inch range, and you're just trying to clip the tops of those weeds, the tops of the switchgrass. We want an actively growing plant. If you mow it too low, you could really harm the plant. You could really set the plant back. And then the other thing is we don't want stubble with switchgrass going into the winter, especially up here in the north. Now down south, you know, southern Illinois, Tennessee, Kentucky, in that region, you guys might be able to back this up a little bit because your growing season is so much longer. But usually around August 1st, we don't want people mowing anymore. It is what it is. You might not get that 5 to 7 foot growth that first year. But like I said before, and again, you're going to get sick of hearing this. If you start clean, you shouldn't have to do anything, okay? So now, general maintenance, what a lot of people like to do, I'm not one of those people, this scares me, is burning. One of our partners, Elliot Hubbard, Lookout Hill Farms, he just did his first switchgrass burn, I believe, this past winter, and he said, or was it a year ago? He said the switchgrass came out amazing, clean, took care of a lot of the weeds, he said, and it just responded really well to fire. Now, I'm not going to talk much about fire. All I'm going to simply mention is it's an option. I've never burned. I've never seen it. I see it on TV. I see it on social media. Some of our partners do it. I know some guys that actually do installing switchgrass for a living. They also help burn it. So I think it's a viable option. If you've got some weeds the first year, that might be one of the options for getting rid of a lot of the native grasses that you're trying to combat. But again, I'm not going to talk much about it. I honestly, my switchgrass patches probably aren't big enough to justify burning. But if you've got large switchgrass plantings, burning is absolutely a viable option. And there's a lot of information. I think if Elliot's going to burn this year, I'm hoping he brings the camera along and talks about his setup and what they're doing. And actually, if you're watching this and you've got some good information on burning, love to hear about it. So, but it is an option for switchgrass, and I know a lot of people do it. What I do as far as maintaining switchgrass is I'll take in the spring, you know, you still got that 5, 6, 7 foot tall stubble. I'll hit that once or twice with a brush hog every other year, every couple years, just because I don't want all that dead thatch standing. And the thing with the brush cutter that I use, you know, it's like a typical brush cutter. It's got that rear chute. If you put it really close to the ground and you get that great big windrow, now you're going to smother the switchgrass that's going to try to come back. So I usually do 2 passes, one high, one maybe a foot off the ground. All I'm doing, folks, is I'm trying to take all that stubble down, chop it up as the new growth is about to come out of the ground. So that's what I do. I don't burn. I do some mowing. Now, fertilizer. We highly recommend not fertilizing the first year planting switchgrass, especially if you're trying to combat weeds, because all you're doing is putting those weeds on steroids, okay? If you've got poor soil, I highly recommend, you can do lime, absolutely you can do lime, but I just, you know, switchgrass is a grass, and it basically just needs some nitrogen, if anything, okay? Don't get carried away with the nitrogen. You know, maybe 25, 30 pounds an acre if you're going to add some. But that's all you really need. But the first year, if you're fighting weeds and you're trying to get that switchgrass to grow, I know the temptation is there to throw nitrogen on it or to throw some fertilizer on it, but all you're doing is helping that weed growth. So you really don't want to fertilize the first year. The second year you can. The only thing I really recommend, like I said before, is lime. If your pH isn't correct. So that's the one thing you might want to look at spreading the first year. Beautiful looking seed, folks. I really like this RC switchgrass. It's nice and clean. I love our packaging, plain plastic bag. You're not paying for extra fluff and anything like that. Now, it's January 31st. We do not have any RC Tecumseh in stock right now. We sold out our first pallet of it. We've got another one coming, I believe, by February 5th. It should be here. But if you're interested in buying RC Tecumseh, I believe this is the last pallet available in the country for the year that we're going to get here. So there's nothing left. From what I understand, this is it for the year. So if you're looking for RC Tecumseh, sandy soil, central Wisconsin, central Michigan, northern Michigan, sandy soils, western Kansas, we're going to have RC Tecumseh here in a few days, and I believe that's going to be it for the year. So check it out, northwoodswhitetails.com. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll see you in a few days.